Before we begin let's do that again. Before we begin, before oh, best start. I have a bit of exciting news that you already know, but I just want to tell greater Artifexia.
I can pretend to not know it.
Oh, you give it a shot. Give us your best surprise reaction, yeah? Exactly. It's exactly what we want. Literally, just like 15 minutes before we started recording this, my If Earth Had Rings video just crossed 1 million views.
Excellent.
Which is a milestone that I'm relatively proud of, and I realize other people like deal in the millions of views, and you know that's their bread and butter. But this is my first one. I was kind of like had a little bit of a fist pump moment. It's like yes. So I'll leave a link.
First video to hit 1 million.
First video to hit 1 million. So I'll leave a
Great.
link in the show notes if people want to go check that one out. Yeah. So I'm just kind of like I'm gonna have maybe I have a celebratory beer tonight.
Sounds good.
So maybe before we start the show proper, maybe we should make people aware that this is our second attempt at recording this.
Okay, yes. We tried to record this episode last week. Well, we did record this episode last week, and we didn't do a very good job of it. It was rather dragged out in places, so we're going to make it leaner and meaner and greener.
And greener.
And spleener.
I am going to hold my hand up here and say that's entirely my fault. There was,
You always say it's entirely your fault. I'm sure I'm partially to blame all of the time.
Okay, we'll go 90-10. It was definitely my fault because I did not make myself clear. Basically what happened, listeners, is that Bill and I got kind of bogged down in a debate about calendars, which we're kind of going to try and rekindle in a bit. And instead of it being like an engaging debate, it kind of came across as if we both hated each other. Because I don't think either of us were making the points very well. So, so apologies for this episode being like a week or two late. But yeah, we just had to re-record because there's no way I would have wanted that to go live. And I'm sure it's the same with Bill as well. So yeah, this is our second pop at the cherry. So do you want to do emails Mark 2?
Okay. So we'll just go through this real quickly. The main email here I want to talk about is actually mainly about flags.
Well, hey!
It's from listener Sarah Clements, who lives in Virginia.
Hi, Sarah.
Hello, Sarah. And we've got a couple of Virginian flags that she's sent in to us to discuss. The first one that we're going to look at is, remember we talked about the Gadsden flag, or the Gadsden, no, I was right first time, Gadsden flag a few episodes ago, the snake flag.
The don't tread on me flag.
Yeah, the don't tread on me flag. It was before they invented grammar. Or before they invented punctuation, rather. There's apparently a trend of making meme versions of the flags, one of which was sent to us, so we can put that in the show notes. But the first proper flag we're going to look at is the flag of Strasbourg, Virginia.
Proper in inverted commas.
The first legitimately actually used in the real world flag, notwithstanding whether it's an atrocity.
Exactly. Okay, so the flag of Strasbourg, Virginia. Even having looked at this last week, it hasn't gotten any better. It's like an anti-wine. It gets worse with age. It's not good.
It wasn't going to be any different.
I know, but you think you'd mellow out to it and be like, actually, no, I was really harsh on it the first time. And you're like, no, I wasn't. In fact, I may have actually gone easy on the flag. So, for listeners, this is the flag of Strasbourg, Virginia, which the flag tells me was founded in 1761. Error number 1. It's a rectangle, and it's divided into 4 triangles. The 2 side triangles are white, and the top triangles are purple. Bonus points for the purple. I got to give it that. And then there's
not very often that you see it in flags. This is true.
Not very often. Outside of Takar, hardly any purple.
Dominica has some purple in it, I think.
Yeah, it has the purple bird.
Purple bird, exactly.
Is there another purple one?
Very Takarian.
I don't know if there's another purple one.
I think that's the only one.
I think so. Anyways, in the center of the Strasbourg flag is like a giant seal, but like unlike the rest of the like US flags where the seal is kind of like small and centered, this is centered but blown up really large, such that the edges of the seal coincide with the edges of the flag, which just blows my mind. It's like no good. And then inside the seal, we have a standard MS Paint sort of job of mountains and rivers, and then there's like a like
Pretty good MS Paint in its defense. Like
that's true. It's someone put some time into this, but it's still kind of pixel art like. And then we have like this discorporated ram's head just sitting there hanging in the corner, hanging out beside two vases which like have this blue detail on it, this leaf detail. And then below all of that is another seal, which is like minuscule and can't be read. So the flag is like an atrocity. Like none of the colors match. They're not complementary. Nothing. It's just it's not good. It's not good.
No.
And you know, this is a thing actually we'll pick up in the second flag, is like all of these crap US flags, they all seem to have this MS Paint thing to it, which made me think, right? There has to be a point at which that technology occurred. And prior to that, there was obviously flags. So I'm wondering what flags these replace, because obviously this didn't go back to antiquity. There's no way you have that level of digital art in the flag of Strasbourg originally. So I want to know what happened to like the old flags. Like, are there old flags? And like, why did someone decide, like, or collectively everyone decided we gotta like digitize, and then it became MS Paint, and it's just horrible?
Like, this might just be a digital rendering of the flag design. You know, the way that you do with seals.
Yeah, so
with like heraldry and stuff. Like maybe it's not saying that the official design necessarily is the MS Paint job, but it's just the one that's online is obviously going to be a digitized rendering, and it happens to have been done in MS Paint.
Do you reckon it happens? Do you reckon the analog version would look better? Like this exact thing? No.
I do not. I do not reckon that.
Just flat up, no. Yeah.
It tells it like it is, Edgar.
Yeah, it's not good. And then the RAM is too deep. It's just a nightmare. Anyways, this second flag is worse. What's the second flag of again?
It is the flag of Carroll County, Virginia.
Carroll County. Do you want to take this, or do you want me to take it again?
You take it. I think you'll do a good job of it.
I love these things. Okay, so standard rectangular flag. We have there's a mountainscape in it. So there is the white sky, like pure white, because that's what the sky is. And then the mountains, again, MS Paint, but really bad MS Paint. Like someone has made their brush size too big. And it's
this is really awful, this MS Paint.
Like, this is like almost bordering on like crap cartoon art. Like this is not good. Not good at all. And then the mountains are like this garish Sonic the Hedgehog blue, like completely stylized. It's just terrible. And then obviously, because it's a US state flag, we have a seal in the middle. And this seal is it's a lot worse than the last one. It's like we have Latin written around the top in an arc, which now my Latin isn't good. It's like Z utere tuo et alium non ladis.
Zic utere.
Zic. Oh, is that a C?
Yeah, it's a C. Sic utere tuo ut alienum non laedas.
Now, do you remember what that meant?
It's a legal term.
Fun times. Nothing says great flag design and having legalities scribbled all across it.
Well, no, it does make sense in terms of American history and their kind of attitudes towards things, especially historically speaking. It's something about use of property. Hold on. Use your property so as not to injure that of your neighbours.
Excellent. Use your property so as not to injure that of your neighbours.
Yeah, no, it's kind of a classic liberal kind of thing, that everyone's entitled to own their things and everyone's entitled to their rights, and it's just the only limit is their rights can't impact on the rights of their neighbours.
Okay, well, that's cool and all, but like, why on the flag? I don't just because you have a nice like legal motto thing. Don't put it on your flag. We don't need to have it on the flag. Anyhow, so we have the lantern going around the top of the seal, and then in the seal we have like a kind of a sort of red palatial kind of country manor sort of thing. Would that be accurate? Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
And then that is like surrounded by a wreath, and then on the side of the wreath are like two orange-looking angels. I think they're angels. The thing on the right looks weird. It could be. It's either an angel or some sort of animal. I don't know. And then out of like the top of the roof, there comes a little pedestal with like two leaves and what looks like a hat with a bird sitting on top of it. And then below that we have Carroll County, Virginia, and a date, all really tiny. And the whole thing, the whole like iconography there is not centered on the seal. And then what makes it doubly worse is the fact that the mountains are kind of odd shaped. So they give the impression that the seal isn't centered on the flag either. So everything just is either off center or looks off center, and it just infuriates my brain. Oh god. Just like, and you could have such a nice flag with you could just do like a stylized blue mountains with white sky. Class, perfect, done, in and out, good. But it's like, no, we have to put everything on our flags.
Nothing succeeds like excess.
Yeah, exactly. So those are two flags of Virginia. Thank you to Sarah for sending them in. I'm always up for diagnosing and analysing terrible flags. And speaking of another terrible flag, I made a flag.
You did?
I did. I made a flag for the podcast, just to rip off other podcasts.
Now, is it a flag specifically for the podcast, or is it a flag for the brand?
Oh, you're so corporate.
Yes, I am.
The brand. You need to define the difference between the two.
Because there is also, I know it's currently dormant, but there's also the Artifexian podcast, or YouTube channel.
Oh yeah, no, that will get a different flag.
That'll get a different flag, okay.
Yeah, because the Artifexian YouTube channel is all based on red, whereas this one is red and blues.
Okay, interesting. So is it like Artifexian is a nation or a nation state, and these are different flags of different organs of state? You know, like you've got, naval jacks, then they're different to the actual national flag sometimes.
Oh, so are you saying like the hypothetical Artifexian YouTube channel flag will be like the naval jack sort of thing, and this will be another thing like that?
Yeah. I mean, maybe we're working up to having an actual overall Artifexian flag, or maybe not. Maybe it's more interesting that way.
That's intriguing. Oh, that might be homework for next week. or next month even. But I don't know. But in any case, shall we describe this flag?
Yes. In the center of the flag, there is a 12-pointed star. It's red, but maybe it's just the surrounding colors that make it seem this way, but it's a slightly orangey red.
Yeah, it's not
It's
pure.
not like a really bright, it's not like a candy red or a cherry red.
It's not pure red, yeah.
Yeah. And the background is two different shades of blue. One quite... I suppose that they're both navy. I'd read them both as navy. One's a slightly lighter navy and one's a slightly darker navy. Now, you've changed this from last week, whereas last week it was against a background that was evenly split horizontally along the middle of the flag into these two fields. Now, that division is slightly curved like a horizon. As
Exactly. Yep. Now, what are your thoughts overall, and then what are your thoughts on the change?
So as I said last week, I like it. I think it's a very nice design. I think it is very visually striking and visually pleasing. And obviously it's those are the colors that we've been using for the podcast, for the YouTube background and on the website and stuff. From a strict vexillological Nope. From a strict vexillological point of view.
Wait, hold on. From a strict what now?
Vexillological.
Okay, what's that again? I can't, the headphones are not working correctly today. I can't hear correctly.
From a strict vexillological point of view.
Look at you crushing your vexillological game.
I don't speak good. From a strict vexillological point of view, there is a problem here in that these two blues are very, very similar. And I get the impression, you're not supposed to use such similar colors together because it makes it hard to distinguish from a distance. But, I don't think we're going to be actually flying this flag on medieval battlefields anytime soon. So I think we can dispense it a little bit, dispense with that worry.
But I want to fly the flag on medieval battlefields.
Well, I'm not going to go with you if you do that because I don't want to either get shot with an arrow or get dysentery.
Okay. One-man adventure. I'll report back how it went.
Update, you got dysentery.
So I thoroughly agree with the line of criticism about the two blues being similar, and I have pointed out to people on the sub before when they've showed me their flags that's not considered good design. Yeah. So the only reason I went for it is literally because we're using those colors on the website. So I went symbolism over rule in a way.
Yeah.
But I'm perfectly open to people being like, that's not a good design. Just to talk through the symbolism, because I kind of like this sort of stuff, the 12-pointed star should be obvious because everything is base 12 in our little world. Mm-hmm. The horizon sort of thing, can either be a horizon, so it looks like a planet, or kind of sort of a part of a waveform, as in we're recording at one another.
Okay.
So it's like symbolizes that this is an audio podcast and it's about building planets, and I thought that was kind of neat. And aspect ratio is 16:9, which is YouTube's aspect ratio. So that kind of plays into the whole thing that we make YouTube videos as well. So I kind of like the symbolism of it. But yes, totally on board with the fact that from a strict vexillological point of view, the colors shouldn't be that close in tone. And I myself would criticize my own flag for that.
That's fair.
But there you go. So I'll throw it in the sub and let people see what they think. But yeah, so there you go. That's flag corner, or
I think that's done. Yeah, I think that's it done.
Okay, so I have just literally 1 point to follow up on. I think the most pertinent thing from the last show was the call for people to leave world building podcasts for us. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to put a big list in the show notes for people to go check out these. Lots of people left some recommendations of big podcasts and small podcasts. It was a good variety, so it was really cool. The thing I want to point out, though, and just talk about a little bit, is the fact that there are some of the Redditors making their own world building podcast, which is just class. And I'm just so up for that. And I just really want to encourage anyone who's considering doing their own podcast, world building or not, to just take the plunge and go and do it. I think an awful lot of creative projects kind of are stillborn in that people just don't take the jump. So trust from someone who's taken the jump a couple of times, do it. You got an idea to do a thing, go ahead and do it. Leave us like a link or whatever, and we'll go check it out and all sort of jazz. And one person on the sub, a u/Dr. Bunny flip flop, which just the best username, has.
I would trust that doctor.
I would too. And they have, at the time we recorded the last show, they didn't have the podcast up that they were planning to do, but now they do, which is awesome. And this is called Sales and Silver, and it's the whole idea is it's like a podcast set in a semi-magical age of sail, and I'm assuming the hosts will talk about all the various different world building that goes on in that. And that sounds awesome.
Kind of a golden age of pirates, I think, is the impression I'm getting from what they've said so far. I haven't listened to the first episode yet. It has been released, as Edgar said, and it's on my list of things to do over the coming week.
And we'll put it in the show notes for other people to check out. And I think that the premise of that sounds really cool. Sounds really fascinating. Now, I didn't realize until today that it's been released, so I'll definitely go and download it and have a listen. And yeah, go check out the other world building podcasts, cross pollination, get your world building fix from wherever you can. Do it, definitely.
And give others their world building fix as well. We've got to support each other. We've got to enable each other's hobby
Are you calling
slash
for
problem.
problem slash addiction?
Yeah, exactly.
There are some times where I'm sitting down and working on having worked on scripts before. I'm kind of like, what am I doing with my life? Like it's really fun, but you're kind of like, man, I'm in my like mid to late 20s and I'm sitting here trying to figure out whether or not a terrestrial planet kind of rings, and it's like, what's going on here? Like,
That's one of the things I love. Like, you're always saying how you're into it to learn things, and I've definitely had a lot of fun. When you get a stupid idea and it's like, is this plausible? Can I make this work? And then it's a couple hours later and you've read loads about super volcanoes.
yeah, no, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Like, obviously,
I don't think anyone's going to take it as such.
Well,
From us of all people.
I think people outside the world building thing kind of go like, you do what now? Wait, hang on. And you're not writing a book or making a game or doing anything. You're just literally, this is just thought experiments? Okay. Would you not just go outside and socialize? And it's like, outside? What is this outside you speak of? But yes, it can be quite an addiction. So yes, we should all enable and support each other's addiction is the message for this. Be a community of enablers. So that is all. That's the main thing for follow up, really. And I think now we should all brace ourselves for the epic debate part 2. As advertised in the previous show, the main topic is going to be calendars and standard fantasy races. Okay? So will we tackle the one that went wrong last time?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's talk calendars. So here's how I think we should structure this. I'm going to tell you, Bill, and the listeners how I go about dealing with calendars.
Okay.
My method for coping with them. And then we'll have your rebuttal, and then we'll talk about how your system is different. And then we definitely should talk about how the two systems can meet in the middle, because I think they can.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so when it comes to calendar billing, my modus operandi is to simplify everything. I don't like taking a system I've built and looking at year lengths and month lengths and all of that and trying to come up with a calendar that has an outrageous amount of leap days and is really complicated to figure out what's going on. I like to find like tips and tricks for making it really simple. Now, the caveat to that is I don't do what a lot of other world builders I've seen on the internet do. I don't just take Earth and simplify it. Like, I don't go, oh, I have a 360-day year, and there's 12 months, and there's 30 days in a month, and there's 3 weeks of 10 days. I don't do that, because then you just have the exact same planet being, like, spawned every single time.
Yeah.
So what I do is I take the stats I've generated from like the various tutorials I've made, and then I look at them and find a way to unify them. And my main method for unifying them is by varying day length. So I look at the two numbers, the number for the year length and the number for the month length, and I ask myself, what value of the day, a length of day, could divide evenly into the year and into the month, such that everything meets in the middle without having to alter any astronomical facts of my universe.
Okay.
And then from there, I kind of decide to bring in kind of controlled chaos. So if I want leap days, I will jigger numbers such that leap days come into it, but only under my control. Like, so I can say with certainty that like there's one day every 10 years as a leap day, and that's it. There's no extra complications and things like that. It's exactly under my control. Or I can go a step further and be like, I'm going to bring in a little bit too much chaos, and that leaves it open for a more cultural sort of thing. But I like to start from a point whereby I've brought the system down into easily manageable multiples of each other.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I follow what you were saying.
Okay, so now do you want to outline your disagreements with this?
Well, I've first of all, I've got a question.
Oh, go for it.
And this, I don't think, is anything that's ever really been covered in any Artifexian content. What actually determines day length, or the rotational period of a planetary body?
Now, as far as I'm aware, it's just serendipity.
Okay, it's just a thing. It can be whatever.
I think it's dependent on how the lumps of rocks stuck together in the first place, and all that momentum and all that sort of jazz. And then obviously the usual astronomical thing is collisions. Like collisions is literally the answer to everything in astronomy. Like, why is this galaxy the way it is? Collision. Why does a planet spin the way that it does? Collision. Why is Venus upside down? Collision. It's always collisions. So you can literally set any real day length, and it will be plausible.
Okay.
That said, though, I think this is a pertinent point. A little cool thing that people mightn't be aware of is that there is a constraint on what's considered to be a habitable day length.
Oh, of course, yeah, sure.
And Stephen Dole, in his Habitable Planets for Man paper from the 60s, so you might want to take this with a pinch of salt, estimates that the day length for humans to live on the planet would be anywhere between about 2 hours and 96 hours, which to me sounds crazy. Like 2 hours seems just bananas. Like, I don't understand how we could function on a planet with a day that's 2 hours long. But this was a published paper, and he's a legit scientist, so I'm going to err on the side of trusting him, although I really, really would be cautious about those numbers.
Yeah, and there's a difference between something being biologically plausibly habitable for people and it being something that you don't have to consider when world building. I mean, I think that if you were setting up a planet that had 2 hour days or 42 hour days, and you don't give any thought into what that does to human psychology and how they set up their societies, then your world building would feel a little loose.
Yeah, very much so. Like, if you didn't explore the ramifications of a 2 hour day, like, that would just be stupid. Like, and if you just assume that the characters continued on as is the way we do, that's just, yeah. I will
for 3 days.
Exactly. I will say, though, but the thing I like about my system, and we'll get to your flaws with it in a sec, is that it does force you to kind of deal with day lengths that you may not have planned for. Like, in trying to find an even multiple of the year length and the month length, you might end up with a day length that is like 32 hours. And then I like that because it kind of makes you think and go, is this plausible? Would it work? Could I deal with that in my writing? What would be the sort of biological implications of that? What does it mean for like nocturnal cycles? All that sort of jazz, as opposed to what I think a lot of world builders do, where they just go, the day is a standard day, and a standard day is always defined as 24 hours.
Yeah.
Now, I fully get now, and also you had a thing last show where you were like, messing with the day length is trippy, and I get that. I really get, like, don't go messing with it without thinking about it. You really have to think about that.
Yeah, well, as I said, you know, if it's a 2 hour or 42 hour and you don't put any thought into it at all, that's going to seem weird to me and probably to a lot of other readers.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, so we're definitely on the same page there.
Now, so what are your misgivings with this idea of like trying to make the system perfect in a way?
Because why would it be perfect? It feels really contrived to me. Well, no, not necessarily, but it seems like you could easily come up with something that's really contrived, because a calendar isn't a naturally existing thing. A calendar is a human imposition of order upon time. So, you know, to deliberately seek something really, really neat, where you have, you know, one leap day every 10 years. I'm sorry I didn't say 12 years, but anyway.
Damn it.
It just, I mean, why?
Well, I mean, I suppose this all came from the fact that, like, I would look at a lot of these orbital periods and be like, I don't want to spend the time trying to compute this. Now, I realize you can just dodge. You can kind of say, well, the culture doesn't understand how to measure these things or whatever. But I like, sometimes you generate numbers that are like 7, 8 decimals long. They're not even multiples of things, and trying to figure out a calendar for that is really tricky. Like, it took humans a long time to try and get like the Gregorian calendar going, and
Right.
but if you don't try and
But that doesn't
simplify
mean
it,
you can't write fiction set before then when it didn't work. I mean, like, obviously, if you're creating a calendar, it's a thing to do, and it's a thing that anyone can do for their setting. But you know, it's not something you necessarily need to get bogged down in to this extent. If you do get weird numbers, then it's okay, because weird numbers could happen in real life.
yeah, and I think this is one of the points that we disagreed on last time, is like, this is just my method that I go to a lot. Like, it's not the method. Like, that is really important. Like, and you don't even need to, you really don't have to deal with calendars at all, because again, like you said, you can set a culture like way back, like pre-scientific age or whatever, and they'll do calendar building an awful lot different than, say, a super advanced one would. So you do have options, and I'm totally not saying that you must do the Edgar thing.
Yeah.
But I think my thing you don't see an awful lot of. Like, I did a quick search for this, and I see very, very few people, like actually no one, recommending this. What I see is either the think about it purely culturally, which is a perfect thing, or simplify Earth. And so I was kind of like, I think my little thing is interesting in a way if used correctly.
What do you mean by think about it purely culturally?
So that would be the idea of like, let's take, so there's an early Mesoamerican society or civilization,
Yeah.
that I don't know what they were called, but they had a 260-day year.
Right.
And they had that for, we don't really know, but there's a whole load of theories. Like, one is that it's just a religious significance to them. The other
Yeah.
is that it's the length of a pregnancy, roughly. And then some people are kind of like, even they track the motion of Venus, which seems weird to me, like why they would do that before the sun and the moon. But so that is just like, they have, as a culture, they have made that decision to kind of ignore like the sun and the moon. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that calendar has a cultural significance to them that way. So it's less about measuring the sun and the moon and more about just how your culture would think about organizing things. Like, in Westeros, I would think there would be a very interesting case in Westeros for doing a weird calendar like that based on the 7 gods. So you could have like 7 months of, say, I don't know, 30 days, whatever, some other thing, and just set up like 1 month per god, and then have that be in no relation related to what the sun and the moon are doing. It's just literally the society has been like, this is our religious thing and we're going to go for it. So that's what I mean by culture. I don't know if that's ever expressed that correctly, but it's like ignoring the astronomical thing to just do more culture building. Make sense?
Yes.
Cool. Now, the thing as well, right? So you, from the last show, the show that never aired, I got the impression you're big into like thinking about how people think about calendars, as opposed to my mathematics sort of thing. The thing I want to say though is I think there's crossover between the two of us. Like,
Yeah.
so for example, like say if I'm building a solar calendar, so a calendar just tracks the motion of a planet around the sun. I will make that a perfect number because that's what I like doing. But in doing that, you're kind of you've opened up the idea of being more creative when it comes to months, because you're not working with the moon anymore. Do you know what I mean? So you've made this sort of neat number that you can deal with, and in the process generated a perhaps cool day length. And then you have to think like, okay, how are my people going to divide up months? Are they going to do it on religious reasons because they have 7 gods, or will they just divide it into 4 because of 4 seasons? And then you begin to bring in culture building that way. So I suppose the point I want to make is that my system is not like an absolute all numbers must be perfect. It's just make it perfect enough that you can manage, which is important to me because it just drives me daft when I can't control numbers.
But I think you can like pretty much manage even with numbers that don't fully match up and have weird intervals, because once you unless you actually need to know how much the seasons are going to drift over a couple of 100 years, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah,
Unless for
obviously.
the purpose of your story you actually need to know that, then
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, no, that is true. And maybe if one could considers calendar building in this way, maybe it'll be an inspiration to write something. Do you know? Like maybe you're running the numbers and you're like, oh, what happens if I put a leap year in every 100 years? And then you might be like, oh, this is like a big event. Maybe someone born in a special year will have some sort of like, he's the seventh son of the seventh son sort of crack. And then that could spawn story ideas if you think about it like that. So I realize my system's very number based, but I do think as well that it does leave it open to culture building. Like
sure.
another thing I do very frequently is that if I, after having done all the tidy numbers, end up with like a very uneven month, like say it has, I don't know, 23 days, like not evenly divisible by 4, not evenly divisible by anything really. Then I start thinking like, okay, how do I break that up? Do I need to break it up like in quarters? Do I need to break it up in even segments? Maybe I could do an asymmetric breakup and things like that. So it's like, just because I'm aiming to get the numbers perfect doesn't mean the result is always perfect. And then when imperfections creep in, then it's culture's time to step in.
Yeah. And also, of course, bear in mind that not everything has to match up entirely. Like our culture has 7 days in a week, and that doesn't divide evenly into nearly any month or into the length of the year.
Yeah, exactly. The 7-day week thing is weird. Our months in the Gregorian calendar as a general thing are just weird. They're like vaguely month-like, but they're not really months. Like they kind of, on the face of it, seem like they're lunar months because they're sort of kind of the length of a orbital period, but they have no relation to it anymore. It's just a bizarre little thing. I suppose the thing that we really disagreed on last week, and we're kind of a bit hesitant to bring it up, but I think we should, is I go a little step further in that once I have made my system and I've created this calendar where everything divides evenly, regardless of the day length I've come up with, like say, for example, it's just for argument's sake, say it's 100 hours. That's crazy, but let's say it's 100 hours. I will then always, as a rule, divide that into 24 hours and redefine what an hour is. The reason for doing this, in my mind, is that a reader or a person playing your game or whatever, they're not going to want to spend the mental energy to constantly have to keep track of like, wait, we're in the 98th hour of the like 403rd day. They're not going to want to do that. So what I try and do is I try and hide all of that stuff away in my calculations and then deliver it to the reader in a sort of package that's familiar to them. And then if they care to find out more about my world in like, say, extra publications or whatever, I can elucidate on those calculations and then they can be like, oh, that's really interesting. This whole time an hour has actually been a lot longer than I thought, and that means all the rest. And I really like that idea, but Bill really doesn't.
And I know this sounds strange because I was saying a while ago about like, using inches and feet but having them mean slightly different things. But I think for this purpose, first of all, I think you're solving a problem that doesn't exist.
That's intriguing.
Because I don't think people are actually going to be keeping track, oh, it's the 96th hour of the 43rd day or whatever. I mean, I don't think it's really that relevant. And also, having an hour actually mean what we understand to be 4 hours is very, very different than having a foot be somewhere between a fifth and a sixth of a person's height. I mean, there's such a difference in scale there that it just feels weird and off-putting to me that you would change the meaning of a word so massively. It's not about like, an inch is 8% different than what it is here. It's actually 400% of what it is here.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think it goes back to what we said before, is that if you're going to do this, you really need to think about it. And, if you're writing stuff like, oh, it took 2 hours to do, like, you really need to think about And in terms of hours being defined differently, you really need to think about like what the implications of that are. Like, don't just in your head continuously assume 2 hours. Like, I 100% get that, but actually, I think it's funny because I think that's a problem that doesn't exist. I think if you were reading a book and you're like, oh, it took 10 hours to travel to the next country, I don't think people actually care if that is in fact like 20 Earth hours and not 10 Earth hours. I think that wouldn't snap them out from the story. And like, again, I think in further publications, it would snap them out of the story, like seeing all the background detail, but that would be after the story's done and if they care to investigate more.
Yeah, but it doesn't. It's not about snapping it out of the story for me. It means something different. Like it means something fundamentally very, very different. And also the use of 24 just seems really arbitrary. Like there and
It's literally catering to Earth readers. Assuming, and
Yeah.
I'm making the assumption that this is a thing that people would care about. Like, I fully get your point that maybe people don't, and they're perfectly okay with constantly hearing characters say, like, oh, it's the 96th hour or whatever. That's literally just me going, like, how can I hide as much of my calculations away? And again, this is totally an Edgar thing, and it, like, I could be completely daft here. Like, I fully get all your points, and I get the fact that you have trepidation about it. For me, it just sits. It just sits really well. It's just kind of like you did all these things, you generated this cool locale, and then you hit it. And for when I think about a story that I'll never write, I'm kind of like, well, I don't think that'll actually have any effect on it. People will just read it as is. But then again, this is why we do this on the podcast. We get to talk to listeners afterwards. So maybe the entire Artifexian will be like, Edgar, come on, we need to stop drinking from the whiskey jar before podcasting.
and like if it was like, it was a 22-hour day and you called it 24 hours, it wouldn't. Like a 22 Earth hours and it was locally divided into 24, that wouldn't put me off that much. But when it's, dealing with like the 2 or 42 hours that we set as the limits of habitable, then it seems weird to me.
I will say as well, though, I kind of naturally I'm inclined when I do these calculations to try and see how close I can actually get it to 24 hours.
Right.
Like a lot of the I've been running calculations on a system that has a 270 something Earth day year and 33 something Earth day month. And in most of the calculations, I've come up with days that are about 22. One was 27 Earth hours long.
So where are you getting that 33 figure from? Are you just dividing the 27.270 whatever by 12?
No, I'm literally just pulling numbers from old Artifexian videos, just being like, okay, I made a star here, I made a moon there, let's put them together and let's see how I can look at this.
Oh, sorry, the month is a lunar month.
The lunar month.
Exactly.
The
Okay,
lunar
I
month,
get
yeah.
you.
And the number I'm generating to try and unify those two disparate things, I try and see, is there a common multiple of those things that's
Right.
close to the 24? Like, I'm with you there. Like, I'm not aiming to do 96-hour days. Like, if it has to be 96-hour days, fine. If that's the number that's generated, that's totally fine. And I'm forced to engage with that critically. But I am being conscious as trying to get as close as possible. Like, ideally, it would be great if 24 divided evenly into it, but it rarely does. So I fully get your point. Yeah, at the extreme ends of the spectrum, I totally get that that it can be very jarring. Like, yeah, taking a 2-hour day and dividing into 24 is bizarre. I'm fully with you there. But I think there's a good range in the middle there where I don't think it is. Like, say, I don't know, 16 to 35, whatever, those two numbers. I think it's manageable there. And then this is what we talk about, like making sure you think about what you're doing. If you don't think about it, you just go like 2 hours, 20, convert into 24, done. Go home, don't think about it any further. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I see what you mean. I just feel, I guess for me it'd be like, I wouldn't care whether the 24 did divide in evenly or not. For me, it would be putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah, again, you like to get down to the cultural stuff. Speaking of which, do you want to segue into culture?
Sure, let's do that.
Okay, so do you want to bring up, you had some cool calendars to make people aware of last time. Do you want to bring them up?
Yeah, well, the primary thing was a video which I sent you and you watched before we recorded last week about medieval European calendars. And while it's broadly familiar to us, it's 12 months, and they're named as we understand them, and they go in the order we understand them. They count them really differently internally. The internal counting is really different. Like you, I can't recall exactly. We'll put the link in the show notes, but you count backwards from 15 for the first half, and then differently again for the second half of the month. And it's, as well as being having the weekly cycle running alongside that, which doesn't interact with it much at all. You have specific days. You've got the Ides and the Nonens and the first day of the month, which I can't remember what it's called, and they're significant kind of feast days derived from Roman times. And it's just like things can be weird, and don't be afraid to have that. Don't sterilize it and by making everything just starting at 1 and counting to 30 and then doing it again all the time, because people are weirder and no one's really well, obviously people did, but it's not the historical norm for people to sit down and come up with a perfectly functioning system and have everyone use that. Mm-hmm. Because, when you're doing that, you have to battle against whatever system people are already using, however people are already counting. That's why no one uses the French Revolutionary calendar, because they tried it for a while and no one actually wanted to use it. They were battling against 1700 years of using a Christian Roman calendar.
Wait, it's the French Revolutionary one. Isn't that a metric calendar? It's like based on 10.
I cannot remember, but what I can do is Google it.
I'm pretty sure. I'm going to call it. I'm not Googling here. I think they had a 10-day week. I think it was part of their whole, let's metric everything. And yeah, it just didn't catch on.
Yeah. I know it's, you'll see references to it in works. There's a work by Marx, the 18th Brumaire of Napoleon, or something like that. Let me just double check this. The 18th Brumaire of Louis Napoleon, yeah. Which is a book by Karl Marx, yes. And because that was the day that Napoleon took over the government and became the first consul of France, and they were using the calendar. And the day it happened was the 18th of Brumaire. So that's what it's remembered as opposed to the 9th of November. Oh. But it's it didn't catch on as an ongoing thing. But yeah, let's look at this. Decimal time. Each day in the Republican calendar was divided into 10 hours, each hour into 100 decimal minutes. Jesus, that's awful.
Wait, hang on. Why is that awful? Hold on. Why is that awful?
Because you'd have to re-remember everything.
You would.
It's an awful change to make. People would be like, I'll be there in a minute, and a minute is actually 2.5 times longer than you remember. Or whatever.
That's, yeah. It's oddly like the conversation we just had.
Yeah. Let me see. 24 by 60 divided by 10 divided by 100. Actually, sorry, it's 1.44 times longer.
I totally get why they were trying to do that, but yes, the change is horrific.
And each decimal went into 100 decimal seconds, and then there were 12 months of 30 days each.
How do they account for the extra 5?
I don't know. The calendar begins on the autumnal equinox. So it was based on the spring, or based on the seasons. It doesn't say here exactly how they dealt with the extra days.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in here, okay?
Yeah.
So actually so many points I've taken down over the course of you talking there. This reminds me of a Roman calendar.
Okay.
I can't remember where it was from and what time period, but there was a time when they kind of had a year of X length, and it didn't match up exactly with the astronomical year. And instead of trying to account for it, they just didn't have time for a bit in the year. In the winter, they would just let time go on unaccounted for until someone's seen, say, the vernal equinox or whatever. And then it was let's start counting again. So the 5 days or whatever, there has been precedent in history where it's just kind of like they are dayless days, a dayless period of X amount of time before we see a thing happen, and then we all count again.
Sure. Or you could just like not that you would have to stop counting. It would just the last month would be of whatever length until you get to the start of when you start counting again.
Or you could have them be, there's a word for this, intercalary, I think it is. Intercalary, I can't remember. But not have them be part of the month. Like, this is nominally different, but like, have your 30-day months and then just have a small 5-day period that is separate. Like, could be a feasting day or whatever, but it doesn't you don't have 11 months of 30 days and then 12 months and then a 12th month of 35, just if you want to keep things even.
Sure.
And if you also don't want to redisperse them out through the year, kind of like we do. So that's that. The second thing this is going back to the medieval calendar. The idea of weird counting. This is a thing that bothers me sometimes, right?
Right.
Calendar builders, they always make it counting up. Why does it always have to count up? Like
as in
years.
You go from 1 up to...
Yeah, we always go up. Like, why don't we ever go down? Like, that's a thing that I don't think explored very often. It's kind of like a T minus X years. Like, imagine you have a situation where you know that there's a big alien invasion happening in 1,000 years or whatever because you've seen them from way off in space coming at you or whatever. You could have a system where people have a countdown calendar, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, there's logistical and informational barriers to that happening in a lot of situations, but it would be an interesting one to play with.
Yeah, like, but I suppose more to the point that you don't necessarily
Well, hold
have
on,
to
they
go
did do that. DC.
Yeah. No. Bill, that's okay, right? Okay. We did up and down. What I'm saying is strictly down. Like there is no down and up, just one direction. Also, so that was one thing that you made me think of, and the other thing is just a clarification on the medieval calendar. Because I don't kill me for this, but I don't think you explained it very well. There is these 3 dates, and what Bill means by kind of this weird counting system is that they will count backwards and forwards from these dates. So instead of being like, say, the 5th of May or whatever, it would be like 2 days before the Ides of March or whatever, So it's kind of like they use these as markers and you're always gauging off that, which I think is super, super interesting. And I said this before earlier, but just to reiterate, whenever I get a month that is not like a prime number, say, for example, I love doing this sort of thing. Like, as in having like the first period is 5 days and then the next period is like, I don't know, 10 days. And the next one is 3. And then it's really weirdly broken up, which I think is super interesting to like do and engage with.
Mm-hmm.
So, so the medieval calendar. I have an interesting calendar.
Yeah?
The Darien calendar, which I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of, but there you go. And it's the calendar for Mars. And those world builders who are into this, like really wanting to figure out how to do like an accurate calendar, this is the calendar to study, because it's literally people going, I wonder what sort of calendar humans would use if we're on Mars. And they've done the whole like trying to calculate exactly how the leap days will work and all that sort of jazz. And it's really interesting. And one of the coolest things about it is that the moons of Mars, both moons, they zip around the planet too fast for them to have any sort of meaning in terms of having a lunar month. So the people who made this calendar were just like, well, we're human beings, we're used to 12, let's just put 12 months on it. And it turns out to be X number of days. So it's this really neat idea of like people coming from one planet will take their preconceived notions of how time should be, and if it suits, put it on another planet, which I think is really fascinating, like super fascinating. And 12 is a good number because it's divided by 4. So you have like summer is 3 months, winter is 3 months. It's very, very good.
There's that brings 2 things to mind.
Go for it. Point number 2. I gotta stop making the joke. I always make that joke. It's just it's like the 4th time on the podcast. It's awful.
So I've mentioned a few times the Kim Stanley Robinson Mars trilogy. And the way they do with that, because that's obviously set on Mars as well, mostly. And the way they do it is, or at least at the start, they use the months of Earth twice over because the year is about twice as long as an Earth year, and it's what they're familiar with. So they just, have September, October, November, December, then 2nd January, 2nd February, and so on. And that works for a while for them, and eventually begins to drift out of sync with the Earth calendar, and it's got they've got very little to do with each other. And of course, the other thing is that the Martian day is, I think, 37 minutes longer than the Earth day.
It's really close, which is class.
Yeah, it's very, very close. And what they do for that, and this is kind of going back to what we were saying about differing the lengths of days, because they're coming from Earth and they have like all this infrastructure and all this cultural association and everything based on seconds and hours and stuff. They count 24 hours in a day, and then at midnight they stop counting for 37 minutes.
And this is kind of like the Roman thing I was saying as well.
Kind of like the Roman thing about the year. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really good.
And it, that develops into a cultural thing. Like they, it's the best time to party, and it's kind of like a secret time in the middle of the night. And
they all go out in the streets and loot and pillage just for that 37-minute period, and then everyone's normal.
Yeah, every night there's a 37-minute purge.
Oh God, that would be 100 times more horrific than trying to change over to decimal time. But yeah, brief tangent, like really brief tangent. What do you think of the proposed flag for Mars that is based off the Kim Stanley Robinson books? Like I'm going to get the color ordering wrong here, but it's like red, green, blue after the various books.
I think that is the correct order.
Is it? Oh, they're pure luck. Literally, they were ones that came in my head. Oh, that's obvious, because red before it's habitable, green is you're making habitable, and blue when all the water arrives. Makes sense. But what do you think of that flag? Tricolour, laid out in the regular tricolour thing, red, green, blue.
I don't think it would look very nice.
Yeah, people love it. I think it looks garish. Like, the symbolism is great, but geez, it looks rubbish.
Yeah.
Not a fan of that. Like, really, people need to. I think people have done redesigns for it because that's not good. I think like official bodies like use it to become like the sort of official, unofficial flag of Mars, and it's kind of like, no, I don't like it.
Yeah,
should adopt the Artifexian flag.
But then we wouldn't be able to use it.
Yeah, we can. We're the originators of the flag. We will license it to them.
I don't think that's how flags work.
But yeah, so and then when you're saying about doubling of the months, this happens in the Jewish calendar. For anyone who doesn't follow the Jewish calendar, they have a lunar solar calendar, which is it's a calendar that seeks to accurately track both the year and the month.
Right.
It's like best of both worlds, because you kind of have three types of calendars. You have like the solar calendar, which the Gregorian calendar is, a lunar calendar, which is like the Islamic calendar, just follows the moon, and then lunisolar calendars that do both. And it's clearly the vastly superior calendar, and it blows my mind that we don't use it here in the West, but there you go, it's a conversation for another day. Because they're trying to do this, they have to, and because months don't divide evenly equal into the year, they have to have leap months, like entire leap months. And so it's not unusual for them to have like December 1 and December 2, and that's a perfectly normal cultural thing, which is crazy to me, like as a sort of like engaging with it, because we don't have that, but it's perfectly normal. And they have this beautiful like 19-year cycle where like every 2 to 3 years there's a leap month, and it's called the Metonic cycle, and it's all like really well calculated, and it's like real genius sort of stuff working it out. So that's another example of having like just doubling the months.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see how that happens. I don't think any calendar system is particularly better than any other, though.
Well, I mean, okay, at the risk of starting another long debate, if a calendar seeks to accurately track two things opposed to one thing, that's surely better. Because, I mean, the solar calendar is really good. Did you say no?
Yeah.
Why no?
Because we're all going to die anyway. Like, it doesn't make a difference. Like, the things are going to happen when they happen, and it's not going to be that hard to figure out when they're going to happen.
I have a rebuttal to that.
What's that?
So, a solar calendar tracks the position of the planet around the the star, which makes it really good at like dating things, and like a lunar calendar makes it really good at predicting when tides are going to be. And like if you try and combine both into like a lunisolar calendar, you get the prediction of dates and the prediction of tides. You don't have to run multiple calendars. Like that just makes more sense
But
to
our
me.
calendar is a lunisolar calendar, and it doesn't tell us when tides are going to be.
No, our calendar isn't a lunisolar calendar. Our calendar is a solar calendar. It just so happens to have these oddly month-like months
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you can. Yeah, I get you.
that aren't actually months. But no, a proper lunisolar calendar, because of how Earth's setup is going to involve leap months. That's kind of almost like how I know them. Like the Chinese calendar is leap months, lunisolar.
Yeah.
The Hebrew calendar or the Jewish calendar, whatever, is the same thing, has leap months, and that's why. So I do think that if a calendar is able to track more things, you're able to determine more things, and you won't need a special calendar for like, I don't know, people who work out in sea for tides. You can just all have the one calendar.
Doesn't move me.
Okay, but you don't get moved by an awful lot. Just that one bit of music, that one time you got moved. When was the one bit of music? We talked about this before. You were like, I don't usually get moved, but I was moved by this. What was it?
Primordial.
Was it Primor? Oh yeah, you felt manly.
No,
I remember that. That was very funny.
it wasn't that I felt manly. It just made me feel manly emotions.
It made you feel manly more. That was what you said. So calendars don't move you, but Primordial does. So do you have anything else to add on calendars?
I don't, but maybe for a future episode, I will do a calendar for Handwavia. Some of the information is already out there in the original episode. If you go back and find it, the PDF of the system, and
Yes.
everything in relation to Earth is already there.
I think if we're going to do calendars too, which might be a good thing to do, we should maybe dedicate some time to talking about calendars around like moons or binary stars and all sorts of jazz, like do a non-Earth-like setup sort of thing, because that's
Sure.
a whole discussion in itself. So if there's interest, we might do that.
Yeah. One of the topics we chose was obviously standard fantasy races, and I decided to explore this by writing a little spin on one of the races that's kind of the standard, part of the standard repertoire of fantasy. So you've read this, Edgar?
I have.
And do you want to tell me what it was you thought, or?
Now, before we do that,
Okay.
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Just in general, what are your thoughts on the standard fantasy races? Like, what's your feelings towards elves, orcs? Are you like sick of them, or are you kind of like, no, they're good, they serve a role, it's all gravy?
It depends on the medium. I recognize their usefulness in games, particularly. That it's something kind of familiar, and it allows you to get stuff out of the way and focus on gameplay. And you know, they're useful in the sense that there's there's a commonly understood scheme for what they're going to be, and then you can play around with that to do interesting things. But for the most part, I'm not particularly interested in like reading anything, any fiction, that has elves and dwarves and hobbits and things. It's just, I think it's kind of played, unless it was, you know, set in a gaming world, you know, a Forgotten Realms novel or something, or Pathfinder. I might give those a shot, but original works and original worlds with elves and dwarves and things hold no particular interest to me.
Do you think there's enough of writers doing their own races, or do you think too many people like hop on the standard fantasy race bandwagon?
I don't know. Maybe I don't read enough fantasy to really be sure. It's very easy for... I think, I suppose, part of the problem here is comparisons are going to be inevitable. If you have an evil race in a series, then they're going to be seen as the orcs. And that comparison is always going to be there. If you have a mysterious or mystical or elder race, they're going to be compared to elves. And that makes things a little difficult in a way. And that's something that I have a bit of a problem with in some of my settings and some of the ideas I have. Is that, well, here's a cool idea that I want to play with, but people are just going to assume that I've just given elves a different name. And I don't want to do that.
Right. That's so even if you do try and step away from the mold, it's so ingrained that people will just be like, oh yeah, they're your elves. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It can be hard.
Agree.
It can be hard to do.
Fully agree. We'll probably get into mining other mythologies in a bit, but I think that might be a fruitful way of going about trying to subvert some of the standard fantasy races. I agree with you fully. I think that, yeah, in gaming environments, when you just want to get on with the gaming and you just need to know, like, you know, the elves are going to be really dexterous and the dwarfs are going to have good strength saves and things like that. That's fine. But yeah, in literature, you kind of want more because you're invested more time in the book, you know? You can spend the time learning and getting to know the different races. So anyhow, going into your work here, Bill has written a bit of prose here and it's entitled The Aruke. And when I read this the first time last week, I was like, I don't understand why this is falling under standard fantasy races, because what I thought happened is that Bill created his own unique race. Because one of the descriptions of this race is that they have tusks. Now, in my mind, when someone says the word tusks, I'm half thinking like, you know, the mammoths from like Lord of the Rings. Like, those are tusks. So I was like, this humanoid, because they're humanoids, the Aruke are humanoid characters. I was thinking humanoids with big, massive, like, elephant tusks. And I was like, oh, elephant people, okay. And then it was only after a lot of confusion when we both established that, in fact, they're orcs, because for reasons that are so blatantly obvious. So I totally missed all that. So what Bill has done, has written a story about orcs. And I
sure wish I'd made the point that
oh no,
to ask listeners and to go and read it for themselves before continuing with the podcast to see what their thoughts were. But oh well.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We can put it in the early release stuff. But
yeah, of course. We'll be putting up the teaser, so a lot of people will have read this earlier. That's fine.
And I promise to not say anything about orcs or elephant people in the comments. And as well, right, I think, upon reflecting upon this, I don't think this is you doing a twist on standard fantasy races, because that's how you've talked about before. I think this is you kind of like seeking to understand standard fantasy races in a way. Does that make any sense? As in, this is... So what Bill has done is he's wrote about a race of orcs, and the impression I get is that he's tried to justify how a lot of their character traits would work. Like, how can a race that is just constantly dedicated to war actually function in real life? And he's come up with a load of scenarios around that. So that's not a twist per se. This is you basically just trying to make logic out of it. That's the impression I get. Am I totally wrong?
I guess not. No, I mean, but it doesn't seem particularly different to me. It's like I've taken the concept of orcs and I'm exploring that.
Well, I mean, different would be like I've taken the concept of orcs and what I've done is I've given them wings and they live in cloud cities. Like, then you're kind of like, oh wait, hang on, we're in a totally different thing here. Whereas this is
then
like,
it's not. Then it's so different that it isn't orcs anymore. And this is kind of the problem I'm alluding to earlier.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. So do you want to TLDR a bit of your writing?
Sure. So, I've created your standard evil race, or, you know, of course, me being me, it's evil from the point of view of the writer of this document. The Aruke can be anywhere between 4 and 10 feet tall, although some reports say that they're up to 12 feet. They're roughly humanoid, although they do have tusks, and their faces is where they differ most from people. They are much, much stronger than humans. So, you know, that's all like the bestial stuff and the martial prowess and ferocity, etc. They're capable of interbreeding with humans. So, you know, you've got half orcs and such in a lot of literature, a lot of works. Now, this is one of the things I think that I added, which is quite interesting, is that when they interbreed with humans, that behaves in a peculiar way. Is that sometimes the offspring may appear to be totally human, and that bloodline will remain totally human for generations, and maybe 3 generations down the line there'll be a child born that appears to be an Arcus. So it's like, I don't know exactly how to express that, but it's this makes them a terrifying enemy. If you consider this race to be a taint, then maybe if you're living near an Arcus area, maybe there's someone near you is going to have an Arcus child, and it makes the taint hard to eradicate. Really, it makes them a very fierce enemy that they can return long after you think they've gone. And it's kind of psychological as well. The kind of the horror of carrying a monstrous child that is used in a lot of horror texts.
So how do the non-orc people deal with this? Like if an Arcus, if an Arcus child were born, like is this do people in your world think fondly of them?
No,
not at all. Like that's
from the point of view of this writer, at least, no.
Okay, so that means if this writer...
they're an orc analog, so yeah.
Okay, right. So that means I'm assuming then, like when half orc babies happen, that they'll just be like exterminated and stuff. Like, are we going really grim here?
Yeah, sure. They kill the baby, but that doesn't solve the problem.
But they'll still do that, though, will they?
Oh yeah, they will. Presumably, they would kill the baby, but that doesn't solve the problem.
No, it's still there. It's still there.
Does it come from the father's side? Does it come from the mother's side? How far back does it go?
And is it
maybe if an Arcus child is born, the entire family will be killed.
Oh.
Because they don't know where it's coming from. They don't know how far back it goes. They don't know how far it reaches.
An entire lineage of people gone.
Yeah. Because they have shown that their blood is tainted.
I didn't actually fully get the like how deep that goes the first time. I was like, oh, that's grim. I like that.
Isn't it?
That's really good. Is it limited to the like 3 generations thing? Is that like tops, or it can go back, like literally it can go back so many generations?
I don't know. It's not necessarily known in world. This writer, who appears to be a naturalist or something of some sort, says that it may infect human bloodlines for at least 3 generations. So
at least
3 is definitely possible. It could be more.
That's a little bit terrifying.
Yeah.
And what made you just come up with this? Like literally just the idea of like creating this like feared race, like literally like playing on the idea of like orcs are feared. Here's a new way of fearing them.
Yeah, and to make them more difficult to be eradicated. Because you could launch a genocidal war against them, but that might not stop it. First of all, you'd have to have the war be utterly successful, and even then, Aruke could still be born.
Jesus, genocide doesn't work. That's intense.
Yeah.
So what else have you done with the orcs? Again, for those not wanting to read or can't read for whatever reason.
So what do I said here? It's believed that arcane humans share a common primordial ancestor, just to justify that happening. As I said, they've a huge range of variation in size and presentation. I was actually kind of inspired by dogs there because the idea that a Chihuahua and Irish Wolfhound can be the same species is hilarious to me. So you could have like. And that makes sense from a point of view of wanting to have different kinds of opponents in a story or in a game or whatever. You could have little 4-foot ones that are goblins, or you could have giant Uruk-hai, or you could have even bigger trolls at 10 feet tall or whatever.
What do these orcs look like? Are we talking same like kind of like dark or green skinned humanoids?
I actually haven't specified that. Maybe I'll have to add that before I go live with this.
Because I mean that's a thing that I'm sure the writer would comment on. Like that would be in his description.
Yes, obviously. I can't believe I overlooked that.
What are you leaning towards? Have you got any initial?
I guess
thoughts?
I would just lean towards green if I had to specify.
Okay. You going to justify how green skin comes into existence, or are you just going to be like it's green because standard fantasy raises?
No, I'm not going to justify that.
Interesting. Anyhow, go
Because
on.
that's like, why like, if you were reading about leopards, like on a casual basis, they wouldn't necessarily go really in depth into why they have spots or like why the spots are specifically the colors they are.
But
It's
yeah,
just that's a thing.
I mean, but you did justify how the generational thing happens by saying they have a common ancestor.
Sure,
So maybe
but
maybe
like,
maybe the writer of this piece can have a thing where he's, I don't know, maybe he has like a corpse of the orc. Maybe he's like a physician or something, and he's like his medical notes are kind of like, oh, it turns out that these people, after having examined like this specimen, blah 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 blah.
possibly, like, yeah, I mean, it's
I'd read
not
that.
something that's totally out of the question, but it's, it doesn't seem immediately relevant for the purpose of this text.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Do you want to keep going?
Yeah, they breed prolifically. Their gestational period is 6 months, so it's shorter than humans, and they reach full maturity in 10 years. So again, that makes them worrying that, like, even if you win a big war against them, if you haven't wiped them out completely, they will recover a lot more quickly than human societies will.
Yeah.
The Arake possess speech, reason, and craft. So they are intelligent and they do have minds and, as I say, speech and reason and craft. They can make things. They have languages.
Why did you feel the need to say that?
Because I think it's always really kind of stupid to have these totally evil races that, like, all they do is war and they don't make anything and they don't, and I hate when
Jesus.
species across an entire planet only have one language. That always really annoys me. So
God, tell us what you really think, Bill.
I made a point of saying that they have languages, though it is certain they do not share a common tongue. Okay. And because, they would, like, if it's a humanoid thing that can successfully wage war against humans, then it would have to have intelligence. It would have to, understand things like tactics. And there's a lot of stuff in older adventure fiction and fantasy and stuff that, they have no minds or they're just crude beasts or whatever, which is absurd.
I think it's almost more terrifying though when they do have reason, because then that implies that they have thought about their actions and have decided, no, mass murder is good for me. I'm going to go with that. Whereas
Sure.
if you've something that just does it out of like a virus or whatever, like that's just kind of like, oh, that's what it does. It's not terrifying,
Yeah, absolutely.
So I agree with you on that. So anyhow, plan forward.
Humans on the edge of their realms are constantly raided for resources and slaves. So that's setting them up as a kind of, an orc or a threat on the borders, a scary other. It is known that in many areas, particularly deep within Arake lands, human tribes live in subjugation, relatively safe from violence, in return for farming their lands in tribute to the Arake, who do not themselves work the land or raise animals. So you couldn't have a huge race like this really be sustainable in the long term, without just being outperformed by humans.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have the numbers, etc. Like, agriculturalists displaced hunter-gatherers because they just, in the long term, they produced better, or whatever. So I thought this was an interesting idea that they would have agriculture, but they wouldn't do it themselves. They would just enslave humans to do it for them.
And see, this is where I thought it was you kind of like trying to logic out what it means to be an orc. Because like if they are this warlike race and they're just constantly at war, they're going to need to have farming as well. And then it's an interesting way of allowing the orcs to constantly be engaged in warfare, but also have all the other stuff. So that's why I was thinking about the not necessarily a twist, but a kind of bringing reason to a standard fantasy race.
Yeah, I was like, adding sort of economic and logistical thought to it.
Yeah, agreed. And I like that. I really like that. I think it's a really good idea.
Thank you.
And I think it's pretty cool because it's like, a Sour Man like has all the orcs do all the stuff. And it's kind of like all the orcs get all the humans to do stuff. It's like it's knocked down the line.
I hadn't thought of that.
It was really cool. So yeah, anything else to add on that?
Well, that's the thrust of what I've written. This is setting neutral for now. So this is not saying that the Aruke exist in Janspar or in Handwavia. They may. I may make that decision later. Or I may adapt elements of this for those settings. But it's just kind of neutral idea that I want to put out there. And it's a thought I've had for a while, some of this, that the thing about the atavistic presence in human bloodlines. I actually wrote a setting for a friend as a birthday present a few years ago, and that was one of the things I had in it, and it's been an idea I've been mulling over since then.
Cool. Now, I have 2 questions.
Go for it.
Number 1, why orcs? Why not elves?
I think because I have all those thoughts about like the idea of the evil fantasy race, and it's always evil, and how I think that's a bit daft and a bit kind of racialized and worrying in a lot of ways, and so it's kind of more interesting to me for that reason to explore that.
So you find
elves don't really interest me all that much. The other ones don't really interest me all that much, and you can always have like there's lots of fantasy that doesn't have elf and dwarf analogues. There's not a huge number that don't have some kind of evil race.
Yeah, that's true. So you find
my knowledge.
the treatment of the evil race egregious, and this is your kind of like...
It can be, yeah. It can be.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the other question, the ultimate question, is what's the flaw here? I kind of feel like I want there to be a flaw in the orcs. Like they seem like this like all-powerful like race, they're, really good at war, like their numbers can get back to steady population really easily, they can affect other people's bloodlines, they've subjugated all these people. It feels like they're just really perfect at doing that. Like I feel like there should be some flaw, something that is like innately wrong with them, like the way we humans like have this tendency to just like destroy our environment and things like that. I feel like there should be something here for the orcs where the observer...
All animals do.
You what?
All animals do.
All animals do, yeah. But specifically in relation to this, I feel like there should be something that the observer observes about the orcs, or the Aruke, and maybe cites that as like a fatal flaw, and or something to be exploited. Like if we're doing the thing where it's like an envoy or whatever. There's
stuff that they don't have. They don't build. They don't farm. That's all. They all rely on their subjugated races to do that for them.
I mean, that just makes them seem like really good CEOs. I mean that like semi-seriously. It's kind of like that's another thing they are really class at. And unless it's stated in other bits of your writing that it seems from this like that's not caused a problem for them societally. So not much of a flaw. I don't know. I want something to be like they're actually all blind. Something where it's kind of like, oh, okay, so they're not just like this immensely physically amazing race that everything just kind of like they're just evil and everything's like really perfectly evil,
They're probably not literate.
Okay, yeah, I suppose not being literate makes governing a bit difficult. They don't have a government, I'm assuming. So, I don't know.
Humans don't have one government.
Well, sorry. What I mean is they're more organized, like almost like Mongols. In that there's
Mongols
like
have a government.
Yeah. Okay. Let me try and get this right. Like as opposed to like a centralized state, like they will have smaller groups, be more kind of like banded. Do you know? Almost like the barbarians around Rome, where it's like lots and lots and lots of really small little states everywhere, as opposed to like one giant, massive, like centralized infrastructure.
They probably don't have bureaucratic infrastructure.
No. Yes, that's the word I'm looking for. I'm sorry, that's exactly the word I'm looking for. They probably don't have that, which is, I guess, a flaw.
Is it?
I don't know. It's harder to... Well, it's not hard.
The barbarians sacked Rome.
Yeah, but, well, I mean, Rome sacked Rome, kind of, didn't it? Like,
sure.
It was kind of like Rome's fault.
Okay.
I don't know.
Attila burned Baghdad.
Yeah.
It's only a flaw if you're elevating certain cultural requirements over others.
Yeah, that makes sense. But do you get what I mean by inbuilding this flaw? Or is that like lazy and too video gamey?
It feels a bit contrived to me.
Okay.
I'm not saying that I do want to make them super powerful or whatever. Obviously, that's not the case, and they are still mortal and everything. But I feel like going out of my way to insert that they have a weakness to silver would feel a bit much.
Okay,
It would feel a bit contrived to me.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, I like it overall though. I particularly like the justifying how their traits could exist in the real world. Like that I really, really enjoy it because it makes me think about the race. I think it's really good.
Cool.
I have a tip before in closing. I have a tip for next time.
Yeah?
Next time, could you write a piece of prose that isn't coming from an objectively awful person?
This isn't coming from an objectively awful person, is it?
Oh, I'm getting slightly the impression that, well, he seems like an outsider, and it seems like everyone hates the Orcs anyways. It seems like they're a little bit racist towards the Orcs. I don't know.
Do you think all of my stuff has been written by objectively awful people?
Yeah, man, you had twice the same envoy guy who was just there to like make a genocide happen.
Okay, and who else?
And this lad.
Oh yeah, and the guy who wrote the language manual.
Oh, okay, the guy who wrote. I forgot about him. He was alright. I liked him.
And the guy who told people to wash their hands.
Who told people to wash their hands? When was this?
My thing about plagues. No, I didn't write that specifically for the podcast, but...
The bit of prose I couldn't understand.
Yeah.
This is why it didn't register, because I couldn't understand it, Bill. I joke. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of want to hear... Yeah, okay. The language one, fair enough. But I want to hear a story from, like, the Orcs' point of view. From the people that are hated or subjugated, I want to hear a story from their point of view. I want to hear what that little town thought of the envoy coming into it.
Okay.
Yeah. Just a thought.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, I'll consider what I do for the next one.
Okay, cool. Jesus, speaking of which, we should really think about what we are going to do for next one. But hey, we'll do that off air. Shall we? Do you have anything further to add, or shall we move into the green room?
So I've been up to things, Edgar.
Oh boy, that's either really good or really gruesome. I don't know.
It's good. Don't worry.
What you been up to?
I went to Berlin at the weekend.
Oh, what did you do in Berlin?
Well, the first day, I drank some beers by the River Spree beside the Berlin Wall. So that was really nice.
Cool.
And I walked around the kind of city centre area. I saw the Brandenburg Gate. And I saw Checkpoint Charlie, which is the old passage between East and West Berlin. Mm-hmm. And so that was all pretty good. And the second day, we took a boat trip, but actually got on the wrong boat, and ended up in a completely different part of Berlin than where we intended to be.
Oh.
But we saw the Reichstag, and we went up the Reichstag Dome.
Cool.
And that was pretty cool. And on the third day, I went to the Natural History Museum.
There's always a museum, Bill. It's
a thing that I do.
Wherever you go in the world, there's always a story about Bill went to a museum.
That's accurate. That's accurate.
How was the museum? How did it pair up to all the rest of them?
Edgar.
Bill.
I saw so many dinosaurs.
But unlike your experience with, I think it was the Natural History Museum in London, I believe, was it actually a good dinosaur exhibit?
It was such a good dinosaur exhibit.
Congratulations, man. I seen a picture today on Reddit, man, where it was a skeleton of a T-Rex covered in flamingos. It was delightful.
That's pretty cool.
Just a total aside. Do you want to continue with your dinosaur story?
I think I saw 10 dinosaurs in total.
Now, is that a lot for like a dinosaur exhibit? I've never been to one.
Yeah, it's a fair bit.
Oh, cool.
I saw a Brachiosaurus.
A Brachiosaurus?
which is the tallest the tallest mounted dinosaur fossil in the world.
Ooh.
It's like 4 stories high. It's huge.
Huh.
Yeah, and I saw an Elaphrosaurus,
Okay.
and a Dicelotosaurus, and an Allosaurus, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
And I also saw Genetia robusta, which is like a smaller Brachiosaurus, and a Kentrosaurus, which is like a Stegosaurus. And what's this one? I'm looking at my photos here now. I saw a Dicrasiosaurus and the Brachiosaurus, right? And that was pretty cool. And I saw an Archaeopteryx, which is like the winged dinosaur, the one that had feathers.
Oh my god, this is brilliant, Bill.
It is.
It's just I get the image of like look, you cute little Bill in the museum. He's like, and I saw this one, and I saw that one, and then there was stuff I was.
Edgar, you think that wasn't what I was like?
I just love.
You know how generally like low affect I am about lots of things, right? You know, I'm not. You know, as he said, I'm not very moved by a lot of stuff. I'm a pretty kind of level kind of guy. You know, I get angry when stuff doesn't work properly and things like that, and I like dogs. But you know, and I laugh easily. But for the rest, I'm a fairly low affect kind of dude, right?
Oh yeah.
Would you say that's a fair statement?
I think that there's never been a truer statement uttered ever, Bill.
Okay, there's no need for sarcasm. I walked up the steps and I saw the Brachiosaurus and I literally gasped out loud, like a child. Yes.
Really?
Yes.
But they're just bones, man.
Man, you don't know how much I love dinosaurs, apparently.
I love the way it's like you discover this about yourself. You're kind of like, I really
I knew how much I love dinosaurs. And I saw the skull of a Pachycephalosaurus, which I will send you the photo of. I'm pretty sure it's actually just a dragon. It really looks like a dragon. And I saw a T-Rex, and that was just very cool. The T-Rex is called Tristan.
Is Tristan the T-Rex?
Tristan's the name of the T-Rex, yeah.
Okay.
And it's cool. The fossil is black for some reason. It's like stained black, or it's actually made of black stone or something. It was really cool.
Where are you sending me this picture?
Oh, do you want me to send it to you now?
Yeah, the dragon, yeah.
Okay.
And by dragon, Bill means bird.
No, Edgar, like, this looks like a dragon.
But they were all just giant, overgrown birds, to be fair. Holy cow.
What does that look like, Edgar?
Like, okay, I'm not on board with the dinosaur thing. I don't find dinosaurs interesting in the slightest, but
What?
that is... Yeah, no, dinosaurs are really boring. Like, they're just big, giant dead things. Like, that's why I'm laughing so much. I can't believe you're driving so much enjoyment from dinosaurs. Like, what? But this thing, like, this is a dragon.
Right?
Like, this is legit, like, Skyrim dragon.
That looks like a dragon from Skyrim, I know.
Yeah.
It's a Pachycephalosaurus. They say. It's clearly a dragon.
That's crazy.
Huh.
Okay, I can get on board with dragons, not with dinosaurs. Sorry.
So I think that was all of the dragons, like all of the dinosaurs I saw.
No, I think it's great that you got to see dinosaurs and you drive enjoyment from that. Don't mean to be dismissive of your dinosaurphilia. Dinosaurphilia? Dinosaurphile.
I assume so.
There you go. Congratulations.
Thank you, Edgar.
So, hold on. Why again were you in Berlin? Like, you just told me what you did in Berlin. What brought you to Berlin? Is it just a holiday?
Just a holiday. Just went for the weekend with some friends.
Cool. Very cool. Would you... Okay, how did Berlin compare to London in terms of, like, scale of city?
Berlin's really big as well, and it kind of even has even less of a center. Well, maybe, I don't know. The kind of central area I think is smaller, but I haven't spent as much time in Berlin, so I can't say. It's less busy.
Okay.
Like London is really intense. It's really, really busy, really, really full of people. I found Berlin to be a bit more chill.
Yeah, London's just, it's just a nightmare. Like, I hate being in London. Like, the times I've been there, it's just all go all the time, and people are really like rushing. Like they'll just like if you fell over in a tube station, people would walk right over you just to rush with their day, and it's just like, whoa, chill, everyone. It's cool. You're not going to get to work faster if you're a dick. Just like, whoa, it's all good.
Well, you might, but is it worth the stain on your immortal soul?
That's a very valid point. So marks out of 10 for Berlin.
Yes.
Yes, good. That's high praise, Bill.
Go to Berlin, have fun. No, I didn't go this time, but the last time I went to the Pergamon Museum, which has some of the coolest stuff I've ever seen in a museum. So if anyone who hasn't been to Berlin is thinking of going to Berlin, do it, and that's another place to visit.
Yeah, I've yet to be, which is kind of shocking.
But you're German.
Kind of shocking given my heritage, but yeah, I've yet to be in Berlin. I have never been to any of the major cities in Germany.
Really?
Unless we're counting Dortmund as being a major city. I don't know if that's entirely true. Or Hanover. I've been to Hanover. I don't know if that's a major, but I haven't been to like Munich or Berlin and things like that. So
Frankfurt.
I've been there nominally in the sense of a stopover. On the subject of traveling, I am going to Korea on the 1st.
That's soon.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Literally the day after work finishes, I'm on a plane. And
Wow.
And then, wait till you hear this crack, right? Going to Korea, whilst in Korea, going to Indonesia, and then going back to Korea, because the captain's got like her holiday, her annual holiday, so she's using as Indonesia trip, and I'm tagging along. Then we go back to Korea, and then I go over to the States, and then I go back home.
Cool.
It's a hell of a summer, and
what are you doing? Oh, you're going to see the eclipse, is it an eclipse?
I am going to see and film the eclipse.
While you're in the States?
While I'm in the States, and also meet up with some friends that I have never met before in the States. In person. Internet friends. Anywho, so the traveling, is that traveling corner done?
I guess that's traveling corner done.
So one final thing before we sign off is that I and you, I imagine, need to thank the Patreons for being.
We definitely do.
Yeah, for being deadly, and we met our first goal. Like within 24 hours, which is amazing. And people went above and beyond the Call of Duty, and it was so cool. So just really want to thank everyone who signed up to be a Patreon. That's literally it. Just need to put it on that record that these guys are awesome.
Yeah, we like so much support so quickly. We hit our stretch goal in like less than a day, less than 24 hours. And everyone's been super supportive, and yeah, we're gonna keep making good content for y'all.
And if we don't, we're gonna re-record.
Yes.
And the final thing.
Now we have to
Now we have to re-record. What?
No, like now, if we make a bad episode, we have to re-record since like we're like crowdfunding it.
Oh, I felt
like
really,
morally.
I felt I actually genuinely felt really bad morally for this one, because kind of like this is the first one where the Patreon's going to kick in, and I was like, oh, it really doesn't sound good. It's not enjoyable listening to two of us argue at each other and get frustrated with one another. So
over an irrelevant tiny point that we mutually just incomprehending.
Two guys lose it over calendars. But there's one last point I need to say about the Patreon is that people left some once-off donations, like bigger than what we were asking for. I need to put on record for those people, because there's been a slight bit of confusion. You can do once off if you want. That is entirely cool. We're totally cool with that. Don't worry. Me and Bill got you covered. We will delete your pledges, or show you how to delete the pledge after you've done your one-off payments. So that's not a problem, because we've received a few emails of people going like, oh my god, I can't afford to do this every month, because they've left a kind of a bigger sum, and it's like, we got you covered. Don't worry. You will not be charged beyond what you want to do. That is like, would just be 100% clear. And if there's any issues at all, you can always email the show, and you'll be top priority, because obviously paying for it.
Yeah.
And that is that. Thank you again, guys. Seriously, thank you so much. For those who might be interested in becoming Patreons, you can go over to patreon.com/the Artifexian podcast and go pledge some moolah if you got it to spare.
Yep.
Yeah? Okay.
Is that us?
I think that's us. And I think that was a good show.
I think that was a good show.
My
file is still under 2 hours, so we're bringing it home. We're bringing it home in time.
We're bringing it home. Okay, Bill, it was a pleasure speaking as always. Thank you so much for re-recording, because that was me who called for re-recording.
Not at all.
I will see you next time.
See you next time.
Edgar out.
Edgar out.
They were beautiful, man. Beautiful. Okay.
Shut up, baby. I know it.